Okay, so 55b on the bottom, the Mishnah. Shisha Dvarim Asu Anshi Yericha, the 6 things that the people of Yericha did. Al Shleisha Micha Biyadam, Al Shleisha Lai Micha Biyadam. 3 of them, the sages protested, and 3 of them, the sages did not protest. Ve'elohein, Ve'elohein Shlai Micha Biyadam. These are the ones that the sages did not protest. Makivan the Kalam Kalayim. They would graft palm trees, which is dates, the whole day. Possibly, the Gemara is going to give us some different interpretations of what was going on, but possibly they would pollinate the female trees. That's possibly the pshat, and that had to be done specifically at a certain time when or before the flowers would open fully or something. So that had to be done, and they would do it on the 14th as well. We were talking about what work you're allowed to do on the 14th. They did this in Yericha. The Karchan is Shema. They would also sandwich the Shema. We'll see what that means also. What is that? Chassidus discusses that actually. The Kaitzim v'Gaitzim Lefnei Aimer. We take out the word Kaitzim. It's supposed to be v'Gaitzim Lefnei Aimer. We'll see in the Gemara about that. They would pile up the grain, the people in Yericha, they would pile it up before the Aimer was brought. Aimer was brought on the 16th of Nisan. They were already doing the work before him and piling it up. Okay, but that was not protested. Those are the ones that the sages, they let it pass. The following are things that they did protest. Matirin gamzir shel hektish. Gemara is going to explain that certain trees, they would cut it down, and then they would let it grow again. So they would use it to use the wood. They would cut it and let it regrow. Now, the previous generation had sanctified those trees. So in Yericha, what they would do was they said it was only sanctified the first time it grew. But now the regrowth, that wasn't sanctified, and they would use the regrowth for personal use. The next thing is Va'echla mitachas hanasharim b'Shabbos. They would eat under the fallen, the fruits that fell on Shabbos. They would eat under those trees. And then the last thing is v'noisen peah li'yarek. They would give peah. Peah is the corner of the field that was left for the poor. They would leave that also by vegetables. You don't have to leave peah for vegetables. And this became a problem, even though they were doing something extra. But when they did this, they also exempted it from Meiser, because you don't take Meiser from peah. This wasn't really peah. So they were exempting it from Meiser, and it wasn't really peah. So that became a problem. The sages protested that. Okay. 6 things that were done in Yericha, 3 were passed through, not being protested, and 3 not. Now the Gemara brings 6 things that Chizkiah did. Apparently, there's some versions that what Chizkiah did is also part of the Mishnah. But by us, we have a Mishnah and a Brisa. Okay. It says, Tan Rabbanan, Shisha Dvar Masa Chizkiah Melech. The rabbis taught that there are 6 things that Chizkiah did. Al Shleisha Haidulay, Al Shleisha Lay Haidulay. And 3 of them, the sages praised him, and on 3 of them they didn't. Or they, I don't know, praised or agreed. I'm not sure. The first one is Gir Atzmais Aviv Almita Shel Chavalim. This means that he dragged his father's bed, the coffin, the bones of his father. He dragged the bones of his father on a bed of ropes. He didn't bury him right away. His father was Achaz, was idolater, and in order to save him from the punishments of serving idolatry, so he gave him this punishment by having his bed dragged through the city, not burying him right away. The body was dragged. Okay. The sages agreed to this. This they said was something good. Kites nachasha nacheshes v'haidolai. there was a snake that was used by a copper snake that they lifted up in the desert. Anyone that looked at it was healed. They still had this, and people started to worship it. So he ground it up. He got rid of it. It shouldn't become something that's worshipped. The sages agreed to that. Gonna say for refuas v'haidulai. Apparently, there was also this book that had in it all the cures, and people relied totally on this book, and they didn't rely on Hashem. So he got rid of this book. Yeah, interesting. And they agreed to it. They thought that was a good thing that he got rid of the book. Three things that they didn't agree to is kitzitz dalser shel heichal v'shigron lemelech Asher. He cut off the doors of the heichal and he sent them to the king of Asher. This was as a tax, as a gift. He was afraid of Sancheiriv, and the prophet told him not to be afraid. Hashem is going to save you. But he did this in the V'lei Haidolai. They didn't agree with that. Sasa megichane el yain V'lei Haidolai. He closed off the waters of the upper Gichain. This we have in the Ir David. You have that the water channel, which they found they dug the channel. He redirected the waters, and they dug from both sides, and there was an inscription on the rock where the two sides met. Yeah, how did they meet? How did they find each other? They claim today that they were, someone was banging on the top, and they were able to hear where they. Otherwise, the tunnels would miss each other. Like I think they did when they dug from France to England. They dug a tunnel. I think they missed the first time. The tunnels didn't. That's a modern day. Back then they made it. So anyway. So he wasn't supposed to do that because he was supposed to just rely on Hashem. The reason why he redirected the water is afraid that Assyria, Sancheiriv, would poison the water. He didn't want them to get the water. So he redirected it into the city. Iber Nisan ben Nisan v'lei haidolai. He made a leap year in Nisan. That means he added an extra Adar after it was already Nisan. And we learned this once before, and what we learned was that he extended the last day of Adar. In other words, it was the 1st of Nisan, which he then said was the 30th of Adar. Wow, it's still the 30th of Adar, then I can still make a leap year. So it wasn't totally off, but the sages didn't agree to that. As he added an extra month, he added an extra Adar in a time that could have already been Nisan, on the 30th of Adar. Okay, now we go back to explain what we learned in the Mishnah with the people of Yerichai. They did 6 things, and 3 of them the sages didn't protest. So the first one was Markivan de Kalam Kalayim. They grafted date palms the whole day of the 14th of Nisan. Hechi Avdi. How did they do this? What were they doing? Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Maisi Asadara. They brought a fresh hadas. Dara over here means wet. Some interpret dara to mean that it had, a hadas is supposed to be on one row, and dara would mean a row. It's supposed to be the 3 leaves come out of the same line. Whatever it is, they brought this hadas, special hadas. B'shichra de dafna, in a beer that was made from the fruit of the daphne tree. Yeah, the Steinzel says a laurel tree. B'kimcha de sari, and barley flour. The rami b'mana was placed in a vessel. That 40 days had not passed by, so it was fresh flour. I guess 40 days is still considered fresh. They boiled up this concoction, and they poured it into the heart of the palm tree. I guess it means on the top. They poured it down. I don't think it means that they made a hole in the tree. I don't know. It could be they went up to the top and poured it in. And and they poured it into all of the trees that were within the Arba Amas of this tree. And if they wouldn't have done this to them, then they would have withered right away. Apparently, this makes the tree so strong that it will eat up all the nutrients from the soil, and all the trees that are around it will die. So this is what they would do, and this is what it means, markivan. Okay, what does that have to do with grafting? I'm not sure. Rav Acha Brei de Rava Amar Manchi Kufra Dichra Lenukvasa. Rav Acha Brei de Rava says they put a branch of a male tree on a female tree. The date palms are dioecious. They have the male flowers, the pollen is on a different tree than what the fruits are. The coconuts are the same. Coconuts are monoecious. They have the same. The male and female is on the same tree. So what would they do over here? They would really actually graft. They were cutting off a branch and putting it on the other tree so that it should give fruit, or possibly they were just pollinating, and they would have to do this when the flowers opened. So this was done on the 14th day, on the 14th of Nisan. Okay. The Karchan Shema. The next thing is that they would sandwich the Shema. What does this mean? Hechi Avdi. How would they do this? Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, Amram Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. V'lo hayam mafsikin. And they didn't stop. So what does it mean, Le'av mafsikin? First pshat is that they weren't marich be'echad. They were supposed to extend the word echad. I guess they were supposed to stop to meditate on that, and they didn't. Rava says mafsikin hayu. They did stop. Ela shayu aimrim hayayim alavavecha. They didn't. They mixed together the words hayayim alavavecha. Shernich mitzavcha hayayim. They should have paused. I command you today, and then say alavavecha. They did Shernich mitzavcha hayayim alavavecha. Today on your heart. The mashma hayayim alavavecha v'lay machar alavavecha. Okay. What is that supposed to mean? It means that they don't need the same dedication later on. Okay, we'll see another pshat that's quoted. Chassidus quotes another something else, that they wouldn't say Baruch Shem K'vayim Malchus Elavad. That we'll see shortly. Yeah, the Alter Rebbe in my Marim has this. What do they say? In Ruzhin, they say that I forget if it was the Ruzhiner himself. Yeah, it was the Ruzhiner himself. As a child, he asked the Alter Rebbe, how is it that you can go from Shema Yisrael, which is Yichud Eilah, to Baruch Shem, which is Yichud Tatar, just one after the other, so quickly? You just say one after the other. Anyway, that's the Kabbalistic, what's going on here. Anyway, the Alter Rebbe gave him an answer that took him several hours to explain. And he understood the whole thing, even though he was only a child of 6 or something. Okay, let's see. Taner Rabban was taught in the Brisa. Ketzadei Karchan Shema. How would they sandwich the Shema? What would they do? Aimrim Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad B'leim Mafsikin, and they wouldn't stop. They wouldn't interrupt. Okay. That's the way we learned before. Dibri Rab Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Mafsikan Hayo Ela Shlo Ya'imrim Baruch Shem Kvar Mechusid Le'olam V'ad. They didn't say, according to Rabbi Yehuda, this is what's going on. They didn't say Baruch Shem. They went Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and they went straight to V'ahavta, which is, by the way, how it is in the Torah. In the Torah, it just goes straight to V'ahavta. Where is it in Veschanan? Veschanan. Okay. Va'anan. The Gemara asks in us, my time Amrin, why actually do we say Baruch Shem? It doesn't say that in the Torah. Kedadarish Reb Shimon ben Lakish. We say it because, as Reb Shimon ben Lakish taught, Dam Reb Shimon ben Lakish taught, Vayikra Yaakov el Banav, Yaakov calls his sons, Vayomer, and he says, Yasva Agid Lechem, gather together and I will tell you. This is in Vayichi. Bikish Yaakov Lagalis Lebanav Ketza Yamin. Yaakov wanted to reveal the end of time to his sons. What is the end of time? Either that when Mashiach's going to come, or maybe the end of time means when they're going to get out of Mitzrayim. And the Shechina went away. Maybe there's something wrong with my children. There's someone of the children is invalid. Avram, Yishmael, just like my grandfather Avram, one of his children wasn't good, Yishmael. Or my father, he had one of his children also wasn't good, Esav. Maybe the same thing is with me. The Yaakov is saying about the tribes. Amrulai Banav. So his son said to him, Shema Yisrael, listen Yisrael. We spoke about this once. How could they call the father by his name? So Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hashem is one. Hashem our God, Hashem is one. Amru Kshem Shein B'libcha Alechad Kachim B'libeinu Alechad. Just like in your heart there's only one Hashem, also in our heart there's only one Hashem. At that time, Pasuk Yaakov Amar Baruch Shem Kvar Mechusid Le'olam V'ad. Yaakov said, "Blessed is Hashem's is the name of Hashem's the glory of His kingdom forever. The name of the glory of His kingdom forever." Amr Rabbanan, the rabbi said, Hechin Avid, what should we do? Namru, should we say Baruch Shem? Lai Amr Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't say that in Veschanan. Doesn't say Baruch Shem. Lai Namru, so okay, so let's not say it. Amr Yaakov, but Yaakov said it. He instituted that we say it quietly. Yeah, they didn't tell this to me in yeshiva. In yeshiva, they told me that the angels say it, and therefore on Yom Kippur we say it out loud because on Yom Kippur we're like angels, and I don't know. All right. Yossi, is this what they taught you in yeshiva? Why you say Baruch Shem quietly? Because we're not sure what to say, if you should say it or not, so we say it quietly. Okay, Amr Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Amri Debei Rabami was taught in the yeshiva of Rabami, Mashal Abbas Melech, similar to a princess. Shehiricha Tzike Kedera, that she smelt the spices at the bottom of the pot, the dried spices that are there, and it's not appropriate for her to eat this. But it smelt good. So Im Timer, if she says that she wants it, so Yesh Lagnai, it's shameful for her to eat that. Light timer, if she doesn't say Yesh Latzar, then she's desiring it and she has pain that she's not getting what she desires. So the servants gave it to her. Her servants gave it to her quietly. So that's what's going on over here. I'm not sure why we need the mashal, but that's a mashal for saying Baruch Shem. Amar Rabavo says, they instituted that we say it out loud because the minim is usually the early Christians, but they would inform on us. What does that mean? If we would say anything in a whisper, they would say that there's other things, they're whispering something over there. We don't know what they're saying. It's something not good. According to Rashi, Rashi says, that we were saying. Yeah, I'm not sure if what Rashi means. It could be that they were saying that the Jewish people also don't believe in one Hashem, because when they say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, they then go and whisper something, and that's what we didn't want. B'nardai the leka minim ad hashta amrila b'chashay. In Nardai, that we still don't have minim in Nardai, so we can still say it. We can say it quietly. We don't have to worry about what people are going to say, because over there's no minim, there's no heretics. Yeah, why are there no heretics in Nardai? I don't know. And Nardai had the yeshiva of Shmuel, and apparently it was founded before Shmuel. It was founded by Reb Shela. That was there before Rav even came. Okay. Tanarabanan. The story in the Brisa. Shisha Dvarim Masan Shiricha Shleisha Bratzin Chachamim Shleisha Shlei Bratzin Chachamim. 6 things were done by the people of Yericho, of Jericho. 3 of them, the sages.
I'm leaving now to the airport, so I'll be a little bit on. Okay, that's lacha.
Safe trip.
Safe trip. Safe trip.
So 3 of them are Bratzin Chachamim, and 3 of them are not Bratzin Chachamim, are not with the will of the sages. Ve'ela Bratzin Chacham. You see, now it's being quoted slightly different. Before we said Shalei Micho Biyadam, the sages didn't protest, or the sages protested. Now it's saying like very positive, and you'll see the Gemara is going to challenge this. Ve'ela Bratzin Chachamim, and these are the ones that was done with the will of the sages. Markivan the Kalam Kalayim, they grafted the palm trees the whole day, the whole 14th of Nisan. V'karchen Shema, and they would sandwich the Shema. They would bring 2 parts together of the Shema, combine it. V'kaitzin ufnei Aimer, and they also would harvest before the Aimer. We're going to mention that can't be an issue. Let's see the next part of this. And the following was not with the will of the sages. They would make the pile of the grain before the Aimer was brought, before the 16th of Nisan. Parts and pratzis began the same part, the same lahachal neshel laniyim b'shnei b'tzeres b'shabbasav v'yem tevim. They made holes in their fences of the gardens and orchards so that the fallen fruits could be eaten by the poor people on Shabbos and Yom Tov. The fruits that fell off the tree would be eaten. With this we mentioned before on the top of the page. We said va'ichlan tachas anasharim b'Shabbos, that they would eat the fruits that fell off the tree on Shabbos. This was from the things that the sages protested. Matirin gamziyeh shel hektish shel charuv shel shikma, and they allowed the growths of hektish trees, of the carob trees and of the sycamore trees, which again, these were trees that were cut and then they would regrow. Div Reb Meir, that's the words of Reb Meir. Amalei Reb Yehuda. Reb Yehuda says to Reb Meir, Imbratzin Chacham Hayoisim, you call Adam Eisim King. What are you saying? You're saying that there were 6 things that were done. 3 of them were the sages wanted it, and 3 of them the sages didn't want. If the sages actually wanted it, why doesn't everyone do it? Why is it only in Yericho? Ella Vela Shlei Bratzim Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda says both of them were not what the sages wanted. The only thing is, 3 of them the sages protested, and 3 of them the sages didn't protest. But they still, even if they didn't protest, doesn't mean they wanted it. These are the ones that they didn't protest. Markivan the Kalam Kalayim. They would do this grafting on the 14th of Nisan, which we said was probably to pollinate the date trees. V'karchen Shema, and they would combine the Shema together. V'kaitzin lifnei ha'Aimer, and they would harvest and pile before the Aimer. That means that they were already working with the grain before the Aimer was brought. We know for sure that you're not allowed to eat the new grain until the Aimer is brought. But what about harvesting and piling and doing all of that? So they would do this in Yericho, and the sages didn't protest. This is what the sages protested to. Matirin gamzi shel hektish shel charuv shel shikma. that they allowed trees that were sanctified, the sycamore tree and the carob tree, after they were sanctified and they were cut down, the new growths they allowed them. Parts and pratzis began to say, they had holes in their fences of the gardens and orchards to feed the fallen fruits to the poor on Shabbos and Yom Tov in the years of famine. And they also gave, they also left the corner of their field even for vegetables. The sages protested against this. Okay, the Gemara challenges one point over here, which we mentioned before, that when it says to harvest, they would harvest the grain before the Eimer. Rabbi Yehuda holds that harvesting the grain was against the will. Vatanan, we have a Mishnah. It says, that they would harvest the grain, and it was the will of the sages. There was no problem. Now, what's going on over here? It has to do with grain that's eligible to be used for the Karban Omer was not allowed to be harvested before the Omer. But grain that wasn't eligible anyway to be used for the Karban Omer was allowed to be harvested before. Now, since Yericha was an area that the grain wasn't the right quality for the Omer, so you were actually allowed to harvest it. But they would pile it up they would make a pile of the grain after they harvested, and that was against the will. That was already a concern that they may eat from it. That was the concern. There was no problem of harvesting. Over there, there was no concern that they would eat from. Once they piled it up, there was already a concern that they're going to eat from it. So that was against the will of the sages. How do you know this is Rabbi Yehuda, though? The sages didn't protest, but it was against their will when they piled it up. Now, man shamet le damer michu v'lei michu. Who is the opinion that says that the whole discussion here is only if they protested or they didn't protest? That was a machlekes Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda was the one that says, did they protest? Did they not protest? It's Rabbi Yehuda. That was Rabbi Yehuda Uktani, and it taught kaitzin b'ratzin chachamim, that they harvested and it was the will of the sages. So what are you saying? Kaitzin was against the will of the sages. Not only was it against, but it was against the will of the sages, but they just didn't protest. That's what Rabbi Yehuda said. So how can it be this? The Gemara says, according to you, the way you read it, Hani Arba'a Havi, there's actually four things. Elasami mikan ksira. You have to take out ksira. So if you go back, it says in Rabbi Yehuda's version of this, when he restates the six things, he says on three of them the sages protested, on three of them the sages didn't protest. These are the ones that the sages didn't protest. There's grafting the dates, karchen shema, and then sandwiching the shema, and then kaitzrin v'goitchin, harvesting and piling. So if you do that separately, kaitzrin v'goitchin, you have four there. So in there's really only supposed to be three. So it says obviously Rabbi Yehuda didn't say kaitzrin, you have to take it out. It says elasami mikan ktsira. Take out ktsira. It's only supposed to say goitchin, that they would pile it up, and that was something that the sages didn't protest to, even though the sages didn't agree with. But the sages allowed them to actually do the harvesting. That was no problem. Okay. Now we say umatir gamzi shel hektish shel churva shel shekma. They would allow the growth of the regrowth of these trees, even though they were sanctified. Amra, they said like this. Our fathers, when they sanctified these trees, they consecrated them. They only consecrated the trunks. But we will allow the aftergrowth. It's not an aftergrowth. It's the regrowth of the tree. Maybe it would grow out on the side. A lot of times you cut a tree down, and down on the side it like grows up. Not from the top. It goes like horns. It looks like. We'll allow that. We're talking about the growth that comes after it was cut, not just the branches. It was cut down and then it regrows. The Savri La Commandam Rein Meila Bigdulan. They held like the opinion that says that there's no Meila by what grows from Hektish. If you have something that's Hektish and then it starts to grow, so is what grows from it considered Meila? According to the people of Yerichai, no, because the trunk, the base of the trunk, was hektish, but what grows from it is not hektish. That's what they held. The Rabbanan said, yeah, you're right, there's no meila, but it's still prohibited to go and use it. And the sages protested against that. What was it? It wasn't a clear violation of meila, but it was still considered hektish. Meila is a special din in hektish where they bring a karban and. Okay, uparts and pratzis. They would make holes in the fence to allow the poor to come in to be able to eat the fruits that were falling on Shabbos. Amar Ula. Ula says, Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Says in the name of Reb Shimon ben Lakish, Machlekes b'shel machpedes. Okay, it's unclear exactly what the Gemara means over here. There's many different interpretations. Machpedes means brooms. And the upper part of it's clearly a higher part on the palm tree where the dates would grow, and that part was called brooms. So the machlekes here is what were the poor taking from? So Ula says, name Reish Lakish, the machlekes was were they the machlekes between the people of Yerichai and the sages was when they were taking the fruits that were falling from, or maybe taking it from the brooms, or falling from the brooms, that upper part of the tree. The Rabbanan Sabri Gozrina and Shemiyala V'yitlish. The Rabbanan said that they're not allowed to do that because there's a decree that maybe they'll go up and they'll actually take it off directly. That's an Av Malachi. You're not allowed to harvest fruit on Shabbos. The people of Yerichai said, we're not making this decree. They're not doing that. They're not taking it from what's attached. They're taking it, it's already detached. But if it had fallen down off those upper part of the tree and had fallen to a lower part of the tree, to the branches, then everyone would agree that that's not a problem because it's not attached and the fruits over there aren't attached at all. And that would be, everyone would agree, even the sages. Amalei Rava, it's probably Rabba, the Bach switches it to Rabba, but Muktas Ninu. But those weren't designated for eating on Shabbos. In other words, when Shabbos came in, those fruits were still on the branches, and you didn't think about eating them, so that's considered muktzah. It's like that. It's like designated out. So v'chitema, maybe we have a pshat over there. Maybe we can say hayol dechazi la'arvin, because it's considered food for ravens. So it should also be considered food for a human, because the ravens would come and they would eat it. Now we're talking about ravens that were owned by, I don't know what people did with them, but they were owned by...
They quote Shakespeare poetry too.
They were owned by the farmer, and he would have to feed it, and that's what this is considered food for his birds. Was not considered muktzah. So the Gemara says hashta muchan ladam layavi muchan leklavim. This doesn't make sense because we have a statement that says that food that's prepared for a human is not considered prepared for a dog. It goes like this. The Tanan was taught in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yudaimer, are you allowed to feed an animal that died on Shabbos? You're allowed to feed it to the dog. Now it became an avela. So beforehand, it was fit for a human. Well, the human would shecht it, but now it died. So if it would be Yom Tif, it would be acceptable to shecht. But here we're dealing with Shabbos. So we say, just because before it wasn't considered muktzah, but now it is muktzah. Now it's considered. Now it's not fit for humans, but is it fit for dogs? We say no, because fit for humans is not fit for dogs. And before it was, when Shabbos came in, it was fit for humans, not really to eat it, but potentially fit for humans. and now it's not. So if we say that something that's not fit for humans is not fit for dogs, so muchan la'arvim avi muchan adam, if it's fit for ravens, you say it's fit for people. Apparently, it needs to be designated exactly for what it's for. That's what we're bringing out of here. So how could you say that the dates that are fallen off the brooms, but they're on the lower branch, they're not considered muktzah because ravens could eat them? But that doesn't mean it's not muktzah. If it's not, if it was fit for humans, it's not fit for dogs. Fit for ravens is fit for humans. The Gemara says Amalei, says in. You're right. Just because it's fit for humans doesn't mean it's fit for dogs. Anything that a person would eat, he has his mind on it and he's going to want to eat it. He's not giving a good food to the dogs. But it works the other way. If it's fit for ravens, it's still fit for humans. Why? People will eat anything that they see, anything that they could possibly eat. So they're not going to give their good food to a dog. But food that looks good for ravens, they'll still eat. Just because it's for ravens doesn't mean they won't eat it. So that's what we're saying. It doesn't need to be specifically for humans. If they look at it and they say, hey, that looks good, why is the birds getting this? This I could eat also. So then they would go ahead and take it. Kiyasa Ravin was a traveler just like Ula. And Ula came earlier, and he said it in the name of Reb Shimon ben Lakish, that the whole machlokes between the people of Yerichai and the sages was about the fruits that were up there on the high parts of the tree, but on the lower parts of the tree, everyone agrees that it's acceptable, that they could take it. Kiyasa Ravin, when Ravin came, he was the traveler later. He came from Eretz Yisrael. Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish, he said it different. He says in the name of Reb Shimon ben Lakish, machlokes b'shel bein hakipin. The whole machlokes is only about the fruits that are on the lower levels of the tree. The Rabbanan tzavri muchan narvan layavim muchan adam. The rabbis held that just because ravens can access that doesn't mean that humans can, and therefore it's muktzah. But the people of Yerichai said no. If it's acceptable for the ravens, it's good for people also. But on the higher parts of the tree, everyone holds that that's also if it's on the higher parts of the tree. So when Ravin came, he said it over in Rish Lakish in a much stricter version. That on the higher parts of the tree, no one would do that. Why? It's the tree. Someone may actually remove it from the tree itself, which is a deraisa. Nice and pay Yerek. One of the things that they did was they gave fruit. They gave they left the corner of the field for the poor for vegetables as well, and the sages protested against that. The Gemara has a question. Let's launch the first parak of Peya. The beginning of Masechtas Peya teaches us what's Peya. It says the Tanat, the first Mishnah is Elu Dvarim Shein Lam Shir, I think. But after that is we say Klal the Tanan. We have a Mishnah. Klal Amru b'Peya. There's a rule regarding Peya. Kol shu oichel, anything that's edible, b'nishmar, and is guarded. That means it's stored. B'gidulei min haaretz, and it grows from the ground. Nishma means it's protected. You protect it, it's not wild. It grows from the ground. It's harvested in one go. That means it all ripens at the same time. And it's stored. And Kol Shuwaichel, the Gemara learns from that what is considered something that's edible. This is the growth of two types of plants, which is not considered edible. Satis, Sviche Satis. Satis, the Steinsaltz translate as woad. It was used as a blue dye. It doesn't consider it edible. And Bekaitza is safflower, which actually was also used as a yellow dye. But now it's used as oil. But that wasn't considered edible, so that you didn't leave Peya from that. Vinishmar, the next part of the Mishnah said anything that was guarded, that meant that you protected it, it wasn't wild. Prat lehefker. You don't have to leave Peya if you got the produce from Hefker. Vigidule min haaretz, it grows from the ground. Prat lekmein or petrios. This is excluding truffles and mushrooms. Truffles, they grow under the ground. But it doesn't grow from the ground. It grows, it's a fungi. It grows from the air, but usually it settles somewhere. So either on a dead tree or something, or on the ground. And it has to be gathered in as one. This is excluding figs, because figs are harvested as they ripen. You don't go out and harvest the whole tree, because each fig ripens separately, probably because the way it's exposed to the sun. And it's taken in and stored. This is excluding vegetables. Vegetables can't be stored. You just have to go out and get for the day, the vegetables for the day. You have a refrigerator, it will last for the week. But it's not like grain where you take it in and you have it for the year. So grain and those types of things are stored, and that's chayiv in peya. But vegetables aren't chayiv in peya. So the question is, what were the people of Yericho thinking? Don't they know this Mishnah? What they were thinking was this: they were talking about the tops of turnips. I guess on the top of turnips, there's some green leaves there. And the turnips themselves, probably similar to potatoes, they could probably take it in and it could probably be stored. So the tops of the turnips could be stored, because if they were attached to the turnip, even though they're green leaves, but they would last longer if they were attached. Is that considered something that's stored, that's taken into storage? So Mar Savar Machnis Lakim Al Yidei Davarach Shmekiyim, and Mar Savar La Shmekiyim. And the others, so here's the machlekes. I don't know if the greens themselves lasted, but because that was brought in to the storage, because what it's attached to was stored, so is that considered something that's stored in chayiv and peya? So the people of Yericho said yes, and the sages said no. That's one pshat. Another pshat is Rabbeinu Chananel, is that it's machnis lakim al yidei davaracha, because they would pickle it. Is that considered stored? So if they would pickle it and it would last, that's machlekes. The people of Yericho said that it lasts. You could store it. I guess if you can pickle it, you can store anything. So so they held that was considered storage. Yeah, according to this chat, I'm not sure why specifically Rashi lifted this. It must have been just something that they did. But l'chayra, you can pickle all the vegetables, and they'll last. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, Tana Rabbanan. Was taught in a brayso. B'Rishena hayanaysin peil alefes ulakruv. You have to look at this brayso carefully. The Tanakama here says originally they would give peya. They would leave the corner of the field for the poor from turnips and from cabbages. That's the first opinion. Turnips and cabbages. Rabbi Yosi says afla kafla, also for leeks. Okay. Looks like the first opinion holds two things, the second opinion holds three things. The Tani Idach, we have another brayso. The first opinion here says that they would leave peya from turnips and leeks. Two things, except it's not the same two as the first brayso. Reb Shimon Omer afla kruv. Reb Shimon says also for cabbage. Reb Shimon holds three things. So the Gemara says, we're on top of Nun Zayin. Name a tlasa Tanai Havi. Do we say that there's three Tanaim? The first opinion of the first brayso says two things. Rabbi Yosi says three. The second brayso says two things. Reb Shimon says three. Now, Reb Shimon and Rabbi Yosi are probably the same opinion, right? And that's what it looks like. But the two first Tanas, the first one says turnips and leeks. Turnips and cabbage. The second one says turnips and leeks. So those are two separate opinions. So Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon are the same, and the two Tanakamas are different. It's three opinions. The Gemara says actually that's not the pshat over here. Like Shrei Tanai have it. There's actually only two opinions here. The Tanakama, the Rabbi Shimon, Hainu Rabbi Yossi. The Tanakama of the second brisa that says you leave payah from turnips and leeks, that's actually the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, who's the second opinion of the first brisa. And the Tanakama, the Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon. The Tanakama of the first brisa is Rabbi Shimon, who's the second opinion of the second brisa. First opinion said of the first brisa said that you leave payah from turnips and cabbage. That's actually Rabbi Shimon's opinion. The problem is my af. Rabbi Shimon says, and Rabbi Yossi say, af lekaflet also, which means that they're saying three things, not two things. The Gemara says akamaisa. No. What Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon are doing are they're dropping the second item and they're replacing it with whatever they hold. So if you look at the first price again, it says that you leave payah from lefes and kruv, turnips and cabbage. Rabbi Yossi Aimer af lekaflet also for leeks. What he's actually doing is he's saying drop the cabbage. You don't leave payah for cabbage. You leave it for turnips and leeks. Turnips, I'm sorry, drop the leeks. Drop the cabbage. You leave it for turnips and leeks. Okay. Now, if you look at the second brisa, it says Tani idach hainesen payah lefes lekaflet is exactly the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Turnips and leeks. So why do you say also? He says also as not only the first thing you do, but also with the thing that I'm adding in, but not the second one. He's dropping the second one. And then you do the same thing for Reb Shimon. And so there's only two opinions. Okay, Taner Rabbanan. We'll start in a brisa. Ben Buin, the son of Buin, I'm not familiar with him, but he was nice and payah liyarek. He left payah for vegetables. Ba'aviv, his father came. Umatzan, he sees la'aniyim shayitunim yarek. The poor people are holding vegetables. And they're at the entrance of the garden. Amalahem, he says to the poor, Bini, my son, my children, I guess. No, he says to his son, Amar Lahem. This is strange. Hashlichem aleichem. I don't know who he's talking to, his son or to the poor. He says it sounds like he's talking to his son, Bini. Amar Lahem, Bini, my son. Hashlichem aleichem. Throw it off them. V'ani neisen lachem keflayim b'mos. I'll give them double from the produce that the meiser was taken from. It's not because I'm stingy and that's why I don't want them to take this. But it's rather because the sage said, don't take payah, don't leave payah from vegetables. The Gemara asks, why does he have to say, it's not because I'm stingy? He doesn't want them to think that he just wants to take away this and maybe he's not going to give them anything else. He doesn't want them to think that. He's going to give them other things. That's why he said that. Okay. What's going on over here with the payah from vegetables? What's the big deal? So it says like this, that when it comes to Meiser, it says the Levi that doesn't have a portion in your field will come and you will give him the Meiser. That means that Meiser only needs to be taken from something that the Levi doesn't have a portion in. But let's say there's something that's Hefker. That means the Levi does have a portion. Levi and everyone else has. You don't have to take Meiser from that. Or let's say it's Payah or Shikha or something. You don't have to take Meiser from that because the Levi has a portion in that. If poor Levi can come, he can take from that as well. So the Meiser is only taken from something that's absolutely restricted from for the Levi. So if you designate Payah, that means that the Levi has access to that, and then you don't have to take Meiser from it. Now, if it's real Payah, then excellent. It's exempt from Meiser. But if it's not real Payah, So it's really chayiv in Meiser. But 1 second, we just said that if you make it hefker, then it's exempt from Meiser in reality as well. So what did you do wrong? It's either exempt from Meiser because it's Peya, or it's exempt from Meiser because it's hefker. So what did you do? What's wrong with leaving Peya from vegetables? It should be mimanavshach. It should be automatically exempt from Meiser anyway. You're not doing anything wrong. The answer is that if it's real Peya, it's exempt from Meiser. If it's not real Peya and you're making it Peya, you still didn't make it Hefker. You only made it Peya, you made it Hefker for the poor, but it's not 100% Peya. Oh, it's not 100% Peya, then it's going to be Chayev and Meiser. Okay, so that was the issue. They were giving a Peya that wasn't Hefker for everyone, it was only Hefker for the poor. Okay, Ten Rabbanan. Start in the Braisa. What happens is the animals that were brought as sacrifices, the Kayanim sometimes would get to eat from it if it was a shlamim. If it wasn't a shlamim, if it was an ayla, the Kayanim would at least get the skin, the hide, the leather. Now, the families of Kayanim were divided into 24 groups, and then each of those groups was divided into 6. And those 6 would serve one day of the week. So there would be a Sunday group, Monday. The larger family was divided into smaller subcategories. So the sacrifices that were brought that day, that evening, they would divide it up, the skins of the animals. However, the stronger Kayanim would come in and they would grab the hides for themselves. So they said, you know what? If we do it all together, there's going to be more power there. We'll be able to stop those strong people from taking it just from the smaller families, and they'll divide it equally from into the larger families.
Are these Kohanim from like Sicily or Italy?
No, from the Bronx. So, on the Lower East Side, probably. So, okay. So they would come b'shaklim ba'adadi, and they would take them together. V'adayin haya gedolei kahuna neitlam meisim b'Israel. Still, the stronger kayanim would come and they would take it by force. Amdu bailim v'ektishim l'shamayim. So the owners would sanctify all of the hides to the Beis Hamikdash. The kayanim don't get it anymore. It goes to the Beis Hamikdash. It was all sanctified. Now, who's the bailim? Rashi says it was the Kayanim themselves because it belonged to the Kayanim. They sanctified it, so no one's taking it for personal use. It wasn't a short time. They were able, I guess with the income that they got from the Beis Hamikdash, got income from this leather, they were able to cover the entire Heichal with plates of gold. Shein Amma al Amma, an Amma by an Amma, with the thickness of a dinar. I guess it was made into frames that are little pieces, amma by an amma, thick, and they would put this on the wall. They would fold it up, and they would put it on the steps of the Temple Mount. So the people that came to visit the temple by the holidays would see that there was no deceit over here, that the money was being used for the temple. Tana Abashal Aimer, starting the Bryce Abashal taught, the beams of sycamore, the trees, were in Jericho. The people, the strong people came and they took it. So they sanctified it. The owner sanctified it. Regarding them, and similar to them, I guess the people that would come and take it, says Abashol ben Batnas Misham Abba Yosef ben Chanan, Oili mi beis baitis. Woe is to me from the house of Baitas. Oili me altan. Woe is to me from their sticks. What is their sticks? They would come and they would hit the people. Oili mi beis chanin, oili me lechishasan. Woe is to me from beis chanin. Woe is to me because of their whispers, which means that they would give bad advice. Oili mi beis katras, oili mi kolmasan. Woe is to me from the house of katras. Woe is to me from their pens. They would write letters.
Are these the names of Kohanim?
I think so. They seem to be families of Kohanim. I saw in the Steinsaltz that in the excavation of the burnt house, there's a in Yerushalayim they did excavations on this thing. It's called the burnt house. Over there, they actually found some sort of coin or something that said Katras on it. They found this family. Oili mi beis Yishmael ben Piachi, oili mi agrifon. Woe was to me from Yishmael ben Piachi. Woe was to me from his fist. I guess they were strong. Shem kayanim gedalim. These are kayanim gedalim. B'neim gizbarim. Their sons are officials. B'chasneim amarkalim, and their son-in-laws are other types of officials. Amarkalim is a amar kulai. They're in charge of things. Va'avdeim chayftem esa'am b'makles, and their servants hit the people with sticks. They were saying how bad it is, these people that were using their power not properly. Tanu Rabbanan, we started in the Brayso. Arba tzvach is tzavcha azara. The azara cried out, the courtyard cried out 4 times. Rishayna, the first time is Tzumikan b'nei Eli. Get out of here, the sons of Eli. Shetimu echel Hashem, they contaminated the house of God. These sons of Eli were not appropriate with the women that came to bring the sacrifices, and also literally they would take the meat with forks before the blood was sprinkled. Get out of here, Yisachar, the man from the village of Barkai. He honors himself and he profanes what's sanctified. What would he do, this Yisachar? He would wear silk on his hands and he would do the avodah. He didn't want to touch anything. So he was too careful with his own, he would wear gloves basically, which was not acceptable to do the service. He couldn't do it with gloves. Before he was criticized, now he's being praised. He says, lift up your gates and Yishmael ben Piachi should come in. Talmid shel Pinchas. He's a student of Pinchas. And let him become the Kohen Gadol. Rashi explains that before, when he was criticized, we said, Oy li mi beis Yishmael ben Piachi. Rashi explains that he himself was good, but his family was bad. So that's why we said before, woe was to us from the house of Yishmael ben Piachi. Vaitzvach Azara, the last thing was, the Azara cried out, Susham Rashechem Yikanis Yochanan ben Narbai, Talmidishan Shal Pinkai, the Imali Kreis Mikachi Shemayim. Let Yochanan ben Narbai, the student of Pinkai, come in and let his stomach get filled with what's sanctified to the heavens, which means that he would eat the karbanos. We'll see. Yochanan ben Narbai, Shayechel Gimel Me'as Agalim. This Yochanan ben Narbai would eat 300 calves. On the side it says that him and his household. It's because he had a large family. They would come in and they would eat all of this. And they would drink 300 jugs of wine. And they would eat 40 saw of the birds. That's just for dessert. All his days, there was never any leftover food in the Beis Hamikdash, which was you weren't supposed to leave over food. When he was around, when his family was around, it was never anything left over. My Salka baby Yisachar Kvar Barkai. What happened with this Yisachar that was wearing gloves? Amru Malka Malkasa. Amri, they said like this: Malka Yasli. The king and queen from the house of Chashmonai, it doesn't tell us who, they were sitting. Malka Amar Kedi Yasi Yai. The king said that goat meat tastes better. Malka Amra Imra Yai. But the queen said that no, lamb is better.
Here we go again, Jews and food. What did they talk about?
So Amru Man Mucha said, who can tell us who's right? So Kohen Gadol, the Kamasa Karbanis Kol Yoma. The Kohen Gadol knows about meat the best because every day he's eating meat because they're bringing Karbanis. So he's going to tell us which one is the best. Asa Iyu. So they brought this Yisachar. Achve Biyadei. He shows with his hand. Igadi Yasik. Igadi Yasik Litmida. He says, if the goat was better, then why don't they bring it for the sacrifice? Obviously, the lamb is better. Amar Malka, the king said, the king was the one that said the goat was better. Hayel v'lei havelei aimsa de malchasa nifsika lemine. The way he said that was disrespectful. He made with his hand, it went like this. So they said he doesn't have respect for the king, for the kingship. So they should cut off his right hand because he made that gesture. Yov Sheikhad, I guess the person in charge, the whatever they call him, not the executioner, but whatever it is. He gave him a bribe, upaskil ismole, and he cut off his left hand instead. Because of the bribe, he saved his right hand. He should be able to still function. Shama Malka, the king hears that what happened, that he didn't cut off his right hand, he cut off his left hand. Upaskil imina, so he cut his right hand off also. Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Brich Rachmana, blessed is Hashem, da'ashkele lisachish kfar barkai, lemitrafse mine b'hai alma. It's good that he got punished in this world because he didn't treat the sacrifices properly. He always wore gloves. He didn't want to touch them. Amar Ravashi, Ravashi says, Yisachish kfar b'kai leitana masnisin. He didn't learn the Mishnah. The Tanan, the Mishnah says, Reb Shimon Aimer, kvashim kaidmin le'izim b'chal makim. The sheep are better, not better. The sheep come first to goats everywhere. Maybe because they're actually better. It says if he brings from a sheep, that tells me that it's not because the sheep are better. It says sheep first, but actually in taste they're both the same. Ravina says that this Yisachar didn't even read the Torah. The Ksivim keves emeiz, ibai keves leisei, ibai eis leisei. That when it comes to a sacrifice of a shlamim, it says you can bring either one. It doesn't give any preference to which one. So he didn't read the Torah either. Pesach Rishon. It's not interesting. It calls this Slikul of Pesach Rishon. This is called Pesach Rishon because the Masechet Pesachim is divided in half. The next part of Pesachim is called Pesach Sheni.